Okay, I'm going to do this from behind the podium, if that's okay. I think I'm big enough to still be seen. So, there is a saying that history is a bad motorist. In fact, history seems to be a lot like a Shanghai taxi driver. It doesn't signal before it makes a major turn. Now, there's a big turn coming up in the history of our categories, of our brands, and of our business. Within the next few years, consumers will be able to produce and consume the majority of the brands that we produce in their home, in their office, or in their car. They will be able to instantaneously produce any brand or product from around the world at the point of consumption. At the push of a button, they have access to the world's brands. Now, that seems to be like science fiction. We've talked a lot this morning about the realities of 3D printing, about the realities of instant production of foods and services. But the fact is, this isn't science fiction. This is happening, and it's going to revolutionize the categories we're in. Now, people here might be thinking, yep, that will happen. At some point this will happen, but it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen in the time that I'm going to be doing my job. It's not going to impact me on my day-to-day. But the fact is, it will. The things that we think are impossible right now aren't just probably going to happen, they're definitely going to happen. This is my son. This is Thomas Erskine McGinnes. He's 5 months old. He was conceived here in Shanghai. Now, we cannot imagine the world that he's going to grow up with and what he's going to see. This is Thomas's great-grandfather and namesake, Erskine McClintock. Now, Erskine is 86 years old. He lives in the same small stone cottage that he was born in rural Canada. Now, they didn't have running water in his cottage till he was 15 years old. They got electricity when he was 25. They got their first phone when he was 35 years old. Now, he sits in the corner of the living room in which he was born, and he Skypes his great-grandson in Asia. In high definition, live, talking back and forth on an iPad. Now, just a few years ago, to Erskine, that idea seemed impossible. That was science fiction. That was Star Trek stuff. But he's doing it. And for him, this isn't intimidating. It's not scary. He says this is just another cool thing that's come along in his lifetime. The water, the phone, the TV, Skype, they're just another cool thing. Now, that's incredible, but that's happened over the course of one man's lifetime. If you look at the emerging countries, the emerging markets, people are moving from no electricity to landlines, to phones, to internet, to smartphones, to global connectivity in the space of months. It's not lifetimes or years. These changes are happening in months now. In 1995, this guy stood up in front of the American Booksellers Association in the States. And he said, you might want to start thinking about internet retailing. This could be something you might need to think about. And in that crowd were Barnes & Noble, Borders, Waterstones, and he was literally laughed off the stage. Now, this wasn't talking about Kindles or virtual reading. This was about the idea of internet ordering of books. Nobody could envisage it. It was impossible. And now, Amazons and Kindles have revitalized that entire category. This woman, Australian, they had their dying dog cloned. These aren't puppies, these are clones of their dog that died. A few years ago, the idea of any of us going into space, were astronauts, was impossible. Last year, Virgin Galactic tickets went on sale. If you have enough money, any one of us in this room can go into space. Now, that seemed impossible. The experts say we are between 5 and 10 years from the commercial 3D printing of human organs. We can have our own DNA harvested and then used to create organs for ourselves. So there will be zero rejection of transplants. Basically, we can create our own replacement parts. As we wear out, we'll replace parts of it, and technically we could live forever. That seemed impossible. Now, if you think about space travel, cloning, digitally printing body organs, suddenly does the idea that McDonald's are going to print a burger in your living room seem that far-fetched? I think the only improbable thing about this is that it hasn't happened already. So who is going to do it? Who's going to make this technology come to life? Who's going to change our lives like this? Who is going to make these breakthroughs the everyday? It's not going to be the scientists. It's not going to be governments. It's not going to be academics. It's going to be the big brands. Virgin might be able to put you into space, but Nike will put a pair of running shoes in the gym when you need them. Coca-Cola will make sure you can get a glass of your favorite beverage in your car. That's where the advances are going to come from. The only question is, who's going to do it first? So what does that mean? And again, this morning people have talked a lot about what's going to happen, but what does it mean to the people in this room? The fact is, this is going to represent a whole new route to market that consumers have access to. It's going to impact some categories more than others. Some will be untouched. Some are going to be completely turned upside down. But the key point is, this puts the smallest brands coming out of a kitchen or a garage on the same even playing field as the biggest brands in the world. Suddenly, there's no longer the huge advantage to size and scale and money that we've been relying on for years. There are so many blockers to most consumers. There are millions of brands, there are millions of products available around the world. But even in the biggest supermarket, the consumers only have access to a small fraction of those. And why is that? Because the reality is, to get from A, the brand, to Z, me, there's a whole set of logistical hurdles that the brand has to get through, the product needs to travel. There's production, packaging, distribution, logistics, supply chain, legal requirements, import-export, listing fees, shelf space, point of sale, advertising. To get from A to Z, out of all of those brands in the world, out of all those products available in the world, only a fraction of them have the size, the history, the expertise, and the money to make that happen, which is why most people can't access most products. But if you can instantly push a button and create any product or food or drink or household care or personal care product instantly in front of you, then none of these logistical hurdles are there anymore. Suddenly, anybody can get their product from A to B. Suddenly, the advantages that the big brands have no longer carry any weight. The home brand, the garage brand, the kitchen brand, the small guys in a room somewhere have all the same advantages and disadvantages as the Unilevers, Procter & Gamble's, Diageo's, LVMH, Campbell's. Everyone is fighting on the same pitch. Now, obviously the retail model isn't going to change overnight. A lot of things that can happen don't happen. In theory, we could all eat food pills. We could eat protein and carbohydrate pills that would be a lot easier and cheaper than food. But we don't. The fact is, we like eating food. We enjoy eating food. We like going to restaurants. We could consume all of our media on our tablets, but people still go to bookshops. They still buy books. They like the feel of books. They like shopping for books. We could stream all of our movies and watch them at home. But going to the movies is more than just a film, it's an experience. So things aren't going to change overnight, but they will change. People will still go to restaurants. People will still eat pizza. They will still order delivery pizza. It might just get to them in a different way. But this does represent a significant challenge to the way of working and the current world order. We can no longer rely on the advantages that we have over the smaller upstarts. So what we need to do is step back and think about what the brand means to people. Forget about the rush to shelf. Forget about the flurry of activities around marketing. Forget about POS. Forget about buy one, get one free. Forget about an advertising campaign. What is it that your brand is doing that excites the consumer? What is your brand doing that says, we're better than that other brand? We connect more with you. How are you standing out? Because you can't hide behind the logistical advantages much longer. Don't forget, originally, brands were about safety. It was about saying you can trust this brand. It's from somebody you know. It's from somewhere you trust. The first registered brand mark in the world was this one. That's the Bass red triangle, and that was originally put on the bottles because people were dying from poisoned beer. Buying this one, you knew was safe. So brands were about reassurance. They were about safety. Then brands became about quality. You bought a brand because it was better quality than the alternative. And now branding is primarily about differentiation. But in the rush to that shelf, we seem to have forgotten why the brand exists. We've got caught up in the noise that we create, and we're rushing to fill shelf space, pointless NPD, innovation that doesn't innovate, and new products that don't give anybody what they want. And that is where the real danger is going to be. That is where smaller, faster, more nimble, agile startups will take advantage of this new technology and speed past you into the consumer's hearts. And this is what we do. This is what brand image does. This is what excites us. This is why we get out of bed in the morning and rush into the office, because we want to understand, what is it that excites your consumer? What is it that makes your brand relevant to your consumer, makes it different, makes it faster, makes it cleaner, makes it brighter, makes it mean more to them than the generic copy down the street? So that's where we want to talk to people about helping them get ahead of the wave rather than miss the wave. So everyone in this room has a choice. They can see this as a huge opportunity, as another fantastic, cool new thing, the way that Erskine sees Skype, a cool new thing to be embraced. Or you can treat it as something to be ignored or scared of. But the world of logistical advantages and being able to get your product to somebody as your main selling point is no longer going to be the advantage it once was. So the choice is ignore it, be scared by it, or hopefully see it for what we believe it is, a cool new thing that can help you touch more customers. And just one last thing that hasn't been mentioned when we've talked about instant production and 3D printing is the impact it's going to have on your bottom line. If your consumer is producing the product themselves at the point of consumption, you have no production costs. You have no packaging costs. You have no distribution costs. Essentially, whatever the consumer pays you for the IP of your brand is pure profit. And without any packaging materials, without any production costs, your environmental impact becomes almost zero. Suddenly, you have a brand that produces phenomenal profits and has almost no environmental impact. That is good for the brand, it's good for the world, and it's good for our children. And that, we think, would be a very cool new thing. Thank you.